Attention, please. Eastern Airlines Flight 19, now ready for departure.
Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're entering the vacation kingdom of the world.
There's enough land here to hold all the ideas and plans we could possibly imagine. We call it EPCOT. Will be our experimental prototype city of tomorrow.
Welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, taking you back to the vacation kingdom of the world, the way it was, and the way it is in your memories.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, the official podcast of the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society. This is episode 68, Magic Journeys. We'll be taking you back to that film that ran at the Imagination Pavilion only for a few years before moving on to another location. We'll talk all about that tonight. I am your host, Todd McCartney, and sitting in with me as always this afternoon, Mr. Hal Bowers coming in from Tampa. How you doing tonight, Hal?
Aloha, I am doing just fine, thank you.
And you know, if it wasn't for your video, which I think we'll have to release, of you tripoded Magic Journeys, which is amazing, and I was able to do a little magic on it.
Yeah, the colors aren't as, fantastic, but it's not, it's as good as we're going to get until Disney releases that pristine transfer that they showed us at the D23 event in Orlando.
You think you're the only person that held a 3D lens up to your camera for the whole shot?
I hope I'm not the only one. I'm sure there were all kinds of other smart people just like me who figured that trick out.
Well, if you had the left lens, if any listeners have the right lens, then we can kind of combine it. We can make our own 3D film again. So
let's get together. Yeah.
We're looking for it.
We can have a 3D time.
Well, with that, we'll welcome Mr. Brian P. Miles.
Good evening, everybody. Greetings and salutations from the city of brotherly love, where hot town summer in the city is underway.
Yeah, it's getting warm out there.
Yes, it is.
All right, and also coming to Ohio, last but not least, Mr. JT Kuzier. How you doing, JT?
I'm great. We're in the summer mode too. Excited. It's summer breaks here. It was a comfortable 70 degrees today. Not too hot, not too cold. Just a nice day.
That's Fahrenheit.
Yes, Fahrenheit. Sorry. Yeah, we're doing good though.
And you switch from worrying about other people's kids to worrying about your own kids now that the summer's here, right?
Yeah, a little bit of all that. Always worrying about mine though.
That's right. All right, well, let's get started with the mailbag. JT, you've got a whole bunch of stuff. We had some late breaking ones come in over the past few hours as well, which is always interesting to get these at the last minute, kind of put the brakes on some things and do a Yui. And
I'll tell you, I didn't do a Yui at all. I just hammered down straight through all this. So the first one that I have here, and I couldn't remember if we addressed this, and if we did, you're going to have to, tell me to stop.
Sure, yeah.
Andy Dolph wrote us, and it looked like him and Hal were writing back and forth. Andy addressed the mannequins control board photo it's pretty much a Disney, looks like a professional photo. You see the dancers on the stage, it says mannequins, and we'll put this in the show notes. He kind of goes around and he says sort of what each computer his best guess is doing. Andy, I believe, was in the industry or something of that note. So here we go. I'm going to read this now to you. He says, my best guess is what we're looking at here is all lighting control. I'm fairly sure that the console on the left is an ETC expression. The monitor that's just to the right of the left console is the display for that console. ETC made that line of consoles for several decades, and they were very standard for theatrical lighting control in many places. Lots of places still use them. He even mentioned that they used a 3.5 floppy, which is funny. I'm not much sure about the console on the right, but if he was going to guess, he'd say it's a second light board to control moving lights. In those days, it was very typical to run conventional theatrical lighting. He says lights with halogen bulbs that run by dimmer packs from one console and moving the automated robotic lights from another console, each with their own operator. And there is 2 operators in this picture. Running moving lights in those days was a very specialized skill. In fact, I think this was the era when basically all moving lights were made and owned by Verilight. They didn't sell them, only lease them in a package that included a console and a technician. Go ahead.
I'm reminded of like when Disney brought the Osborne lights, how it was like, wow. And then 15 years later, you could buy it at Costco, like the whole setup for $12 to do the same thing at your house.
I was going to say just what JT did, and it can now be done with 2 iPhones, 1 person, and 7 LED lights, right? and a light bulb.
I know it is. 2 people compete. Full computers here. They're looking like to run this whole setup, and this wasn't even like 1970s Studio 54 here. This was into the 90s. I never worked in them in this era, but my understanding is they were so complex and hard to keep running that doing it that way was the only chance to have them be reliable. So super interesting, Andy. And if you look at this photo, it definitely lends a little bit to that. But I think that goes to show what went into Pleasure Island just to make it to happen. And we're going to hit on that tonight, too, with the Magic Journey stuff in our interview. You start hearing these backstories. It's just insane how much effort and time went into all this stuff. So,
yeah, I recall besides just the normal lights that you would expect in the disco, up on the stage where the dancers were, I think there was basically like a matrix of movable lights that they could also like flash and have it run like make it look like it was moving from left and right and back and forth and up and down and strobe and all kinds of stuff. So I bet that in itself was like a very complicated piece of stuff to run.
Yeah, just to entertain a bunch of people dancing and drinking.
Yep.
Okay, as I did last month, I went into my archive. As I said, if you tweet us or you message us on a social where it's kind of tougher to find, I try to save those as well. Found one here from back in September of 2020, of all things. It's from our old pal, which I feel like we've read this before. I read from him before, Jason Burley. He sent us some pictures from a recent trip to Disney World. Just some selfies. He's got the carpet wall on the monorail. He's at the Kugel ball there. A bunch of various things going on with Jason. So thank you for sharing that with us, Jason. Okay, this one here is... Let me open this one. This is from John Baldwin. And Brian, I'm going to let you take this because I know you have a better version of this. I think I'm looking at the 4th email here between everybody. John wrote us about the props and the pieces parts at Port Orleans French Quarter. Isn't that right?
Yeah, we had gotten an email a few months back that I think we shared in last month's episode, querying. The guy had been watching, I think, the Discovery Channel, where they had gone into a floatworks down in New Orleans, a factory that manufactured the parade floats that are used in Mardi Gras parades in New Orleans and manufactured for other places. And he thought it looked identical to several of the pieces that hung on the wall in Port Orleans French Quarter back when their food court had more Mardi Gras theming. And we looked at the comparisons, and our answer on last month's show was we don't know definitively, but they sure look identical. And Disney doesn't make this stuff themselves, so it certainly would make sense that they would be buying them from whoever provides those to people. And then we got a follow-up email from a guy. It's funny because John Baldwin checked back in with us because my reply to him about it had been lost in his spam folder. So John's email came in just at the point where we got this interesting email just this week from Jacques Abadi, and I apologize if I didn't get the Frenchness or Acadianness of that name. But Jacques wrote to us and said, the crew of Caesar was the organization that paraded at Pleasure Island. Caesar began parading in 1980 in the New Orleans suburb of Metairie, Louisiana. Once 2 of my cousins were in the parade, one the queen and one a maid. They both made the trip to Disney. Blaine Kern was the man who started Kern Studios and Mardi Gras World, which is the factory the floatworks we talked about last month. And he started building Mardi Gras floats as a young man and went on to be known as Mr. Mardi Gras for his dominance of the industry. In the early days, he was recruited by Disney, but he chose to remain in New Orleans. The story is he believed he would be a small fish in Hollywood, but a big fish in New Orleans. Kern Studios does the floats for the Universal Mardi Gras celebration to this day. So it's an interesting confluence of Mardi Gras. Apparently, Mardi Gras World is the place to go for Mardi Gras stuff.
Are we going to have a Mardi Gras party anytime? Because we might need to go there.
That just opens us up to all kinds of trouble.
It might. Yeah, it might not be. Really
we know who to call though if we ever change our mind.
Absolutely, Jacques' my first call.
That's right.
Well, thank you, Jacques. Thank you, John. We appreciate all that on the Mardi Gras New Orleans stuff there. Next up is Colleen. Colleen sent us an Instagram message, and this will be shared in the show notes. She shared speaking of Mardi Gras, I see how I did that, a 1996 Mardi Gras cup from Pleasure Island that's chilling at her place of business. I don't know. Maybe she works at Mardi Gras World. Who knows? And
maybe.
We'll go back. But Colleen shared that with us. So we appreciate that. Thank you. Dane is up next. Dane wrote and said, in one episode, we mentioned a guide to Tomorrowland. Guide to Tomorrowland. He wants to know, what is that? And I really don't know. Do you guys know what you were talking about when you said Guide to Tomorrowland?
Well, Dane, episode 26 just happened for you, but episode 26 happened for us like 4 years ago.
That was, I'll take you guys way back here. That was our episode Tiny Bubbles, about 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Ah, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
And he said we had it in our giveaway, included a guide to Tomorrowland. Couldn't find an image on your site. Does it ring a bell? He just would love to see what it is.
I'm sorry it's not on the site. We will get it on the site. Because I have it, and we have it somewhere in the archives, so we'll pass it on to you guys so we can put it up there. It highlighted some of the attractions that hadn't been put in yet. Like it kind of mentioned, I believe at the time it was written, it's still thought the Wedway was going to have wheels instead. Be driven by wheels rather than by linear induction motors. And there were a couple of other things. One of the interesting things is it put 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea into Tomorrowland instead of Fantasyland. So it must have been, early 1970 that this thing was put together. So I'll make sure to send it to you, JT, so you can put it in the show notes.
Okay, thank you, Dane. We appreciate that. Next up is Carla. Carla has written us before. She said, hey guys, love the retro food episode. I just listened to it a few times. Loved looking at the 1981 food guide, too, that you posted. She says, I'm guessing I'm not the first one to send this in, but Earl of Sandwich is where the gourmet pantry used to be, and the Wolfgang Puck Cafe was previously Minnie Mia's Pizzeria. She doesn't have clear memories of Heidelberger's Deli, but I know that was that's the two they went to, the gourmet pantry every time we went to the village, and we ate at Minnie Mia's as well. So thank you, Carla, for that.
This is a great opportunity to mention the 72,000 emails we got about Dunderbachs and the German restaurants that
yes.
people are beloved around the country, apparently.
For sure. We got that, and we did got some beer pictures of the Schafferhofer we mentioned, which I don't know if people knew that was in there. I saw one person surprised to find it. It seems to be pretty local, even though it seemed like one of those special things you only buy at Disney World, and then when you see it in your grocery store a mile from your house, it kind of takes away the excitement of it, I think. So thank you, Carla, for that. All right, we're getting there. Almost done here. And we had a lot of good stuff, though. So this is from Philip Taylor, and I love this Philip. This is probably one of my... This gets my pick of the month for my favorite message. Phil says, the Pleasure Island episodes were great. They reminded me of a friend who was in the nightclub business for years. He was also in the high-profile security business. He said basically security guards for rich people. Occasionally, Disney would hire him to be the guy that would protect the stars at Downtown Disney and Pleasure Island. He told me a funny story about shopping after hours with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. So now we need to know, what year did Tom and Nicole break up, because we could kind of date this era a little bit.
I mean, they were together for the whole 90s, weren't they? They made Far and Away in like 1991 or 92. That's where they met. And, I think they were together for most of the 90s and maybe the early 2000s. It was...
Philip goes on to say that when you're Tom Cruise, you could just open any store you wanted any time of the day. And there's that story you've heard about. Tom Cruise was one of the few people, or one of the people that made it public, that rented out the castle to stay there. That wasn't in the Year of a Million Dreams winner. Maybe he won, who knows. But they said at one point during the shopping, Tom decided to start a game of touch football in the store with Disney football he picked up. I wish I could. Not every store has football, so we could probably iron this, get this down to where it was at some point. But I don't think it was at Pleasure Island though either. He says his friend played the game with him. They completely trashed the store, and at the end, Tom said, "Just send me the bill. I'll pay for it." So that is a great story. It's hilarious, but at the same time, it seems just right for Tom Cruise.
Let's about the reputation.
Yeah, let's just
right about the reputation.
Act like a lunatic
for the guy that walked into a shot or did the sound wrong on that. Remember that tape that came out last year?
You're back there in Hollywood making movies right now because of us. We are creating thousands of jobs. I don't ever want to see it again. Ever. And if you don't do it, you're fired. And I see you do it again, you're gone.
Well, you know the story about Artie when he was on the Jerry Maguire set. His scene got cut.
Yeah.
But he has like 3 stories about like nobody was allowed to look at Tom Cruise when he was. But he does all of his own stunts.
He is Tom Cruise too. Let's be honest. I mean,
he still looks like he's 27 and he's 60.
So thank you, Phil, for that. I love the story. That goes to anybody. We love getting these stories because Phil, without you, that story would be probably lost forever. That's awesome. My final thing here, I just want to reach out and say, if you haven't done it or you have done it, we're still on Spectra Radio Thursdays for Throwback Thursday Radio. That's at, I believe, 9 a.m. We have roughly an hour on there of classic Disney music. It's super high quality audio. It's a lot of fun to be on there, and click that on Thursday morning. So check out Spectra Radio on your various streaming apps. For the chance to get on our show, though, messages, comments, tweets, we try to look at all of it, but send us an email for something like super important, a big story, anything like that, podcast@retrowdw.com. You get a chance to be on the show. We don't get to all of them. We try to reply to everybody. If we don't reply to you, apologies, but we definitely appreciate all the messages, photos, stories, and memories that you send us.
All right, and guys, I got something to give away this month. I know we have given away a couple different things. How last month we talked about those 3 little books. I'm sorry. We talked about the 10th anniversary book, the 15th anniversary book, and the 20th anniversary hardcover, right? And I said, "Oh, I've got the 15 and the 20." So I ran out and ordered the 10, and the day before it arrived, the 10 was sitting. It was there next to the other ones. I didn't realize I actually already had it. For the the $4.99 I spent or whatever it was, we have the Walt Disney World, the First Decade hardcover book to give away. So I'll send that out.
That's a good price.
Yeah, it was a very good price. Yeah. So JT, we need a retro keyword.
How about decade?
Decade. There we go. All right. Send the subject line decade. Send your email to contest@retrowdw.com, and we will pick a random winner from all entries. All right, well, it's time for this month's topic, which, as we mentioned at the top of the show, is Magic Journeys. It's a 3D film that ran at the Imagination Pavilion in EPCOT. And we're going to dial it way back here and go back through some of the history. And we're going to talk about the theater, the music. We're going to do a walkthrough, the entire film and everything. So I've been doing a lot of research on this, guys. I have to say, everything we start. Remember last month we promised, we said, we'll do Magic Journeys and ImageWorks. Yeah, that lasted about 15 minutes into my research for this episode. I was like, that's it. ImageWorks is out. So for those of you who are excited about ImageWorks, it will be coming in a separate episode. There was just too much to unpack here.
Hal has an hour and a half on the pin push table alone. So
exactly. And there's so much there. There's music to talk about for ImageWorks and so much visuals to talk about. So it will be another day. So, all right. So Magic Journeys. We're going to turn the clock back to 1927 when Murray Lerner was born, who turned out to be the director for this film. And the reason I'm starting with Murray is that we really have to understand some of his history before we can understand why he was chosen to make Magic Journeys at EPCOT. So he was a literature major at Harvard, and he formed the school's first film society. And he produced a film called A Touch of Time, and it became Life Magazine's Movie of the Week. I don't know how a magazine has a Movie of the Week, but I guess somehow we can do that. And the film was really groundbreaking, and that really he became well known for that through his entire career, being very groundbreaking. So ironically, we move to 1955, a date all Disney historians know very well, and he creates an undersea movie called Secrets of the Reef. A little later on, Lerner received an Oscar nomination for his documentary Festival in 1967 about the Newport Folk Festival. And he also directed concert films for The Who, Jimi Hendrix, and all sorts of other artists. But Secrets of the Reef is really the important one here because it was sponsored by Marineland of Florida. So let's fast forward to 1978. Marineland contacts Murray and says, hey, we want a new film, a new process, and a new theater. And he starts thinking about it. So while this is kind of in the early beginnings of IMAX, and they felt it wasn't exciting enough, so Murray and Marineland settled on a 3D film, and the film Sea Dream is born. See what I did there? The sea is born from the living seas. Yeah, you see. Oh, you see. All right. The film was the first ever 3D film, and it also played at the Cannes Film Festival. So how does this relate to Disney is that Lerner, a quote that he said is that he wants to get audiences involved and make them part of the film, and that he always put effort into getting the audience reaction to his films, and 3D could bring audience participation. And he actually would watch his 3D films with the audience, and he said, this is really interesting too. He says you can't understand the film unless you see them with an audience. Now think about that for a minute, what we're talking about tonight, right? The interaction that he wanted with the film. We're going to talk a little bit about how you can go online, you can watch Magic Journeys now, and you might not get it. But if you can't understand the film unless you see it with an audience and the 3D happening, it makes Magic Journeys on YouTube in 2D flat. It doesn't work as much as it would in the theater. So after Sea Dreams, Lerner wins an Academy Award for Best Documentary, Mao to Mozart, and all of a sudden he is primed to be chosen for another film. Now, with Journey into Imagination, Traction was running behind on schedule. Now, don't forget, remember, guys, Journey into Imagination didn't open until, March 83, somewhere in there, right? So they're running behind, and they need to open the Imagination Pavilion or risk losing the sponsorship of Eastman Kodak. So basically, Kodak had a clause where they could pull out of the contract, and WED needed something to fill in this gap really quick. So the decision was made to premiere a film in the Magic Eye studio in lieu of an attraction for the time being. And we'll find out here that Magic Journeys itself almost didn't make that deadline. So now Disney needed someone that could deliver a movie that played big. Guests needed to feel like they were part of the action, similar to experiencing a concert film is what they were going after. Murray was a perfect choice because the narrative was loose. I think the narrative is extremely loose when we talk about it later. And it allowed for natural landscapes and a more documentarian feel to it. So they contracted Lerner for Magic Journeys. He developed the script and did his own storyboard. And he is quoted as saying, "I don't know where it came from. My imagination, I guess," which is quite fitting for the Imagination Pavilion. And again, they talked to him afterwards, and we're going to hear from Murray himself here in a second. But he said he wanted to interact with the audience, and every second he had to play with space and dimensionality, and it continually evolved as he was filming it. And but let's hear a little bit what Murray has to say about Magic Journeys.
Magic Journeys was a very big project I did for Disney in 3D, and had a lot of never before tried effects in 3D, which I brought to it. New ideas to create this, in a way, unreality. What I did in the EPCOT film was extend my experimentation to a whole bunch of new factors, which is, as I say, changing the interocular. I always try to get stuff to come off the screen and kind of make you feel you're there. And a lot of people don't like that, but I like it, you know. I go all the way with that. I think the only interesting thing about 3D is to dramatize the space between you and the screen. And that's what I try to do in all my 3D work.
I think the synopsis really of Magic Journeys, and we're going to get into the details of it here in a little bit, is that it presents our world through the eyes of a child. And that's a tough thing to swallow. I don't know. Some people could say it's a dream, but I don't know what you guys think. But we'll talk about some of that a little bit later. And, you know, the other thing, too, is his style, Lerner's style of film, really drew you in close to the action. The 3D format put a different perspective on things, and it really helps explain, well, for all intents and purposes, right? It's eerie at times. It's really an eerie film and a little freaky. But there's little distance between the audience and the people that are on the screen, so it just brings it that much closer. Last thing is that they did need an executive producer, and the late Randy Bright was chosen for that. And as we know, Randy Bright is a Disney legend. And all right, so guys, who remembers from when we did Horizons what 3D is? Come on, JT, do you remember?
It's when you put the glasses on and it tricks your eyes, and I prefer 4D actually.
You like 4D? You want to get splashed with water and
the air,
and scents and all that stuff.
Yes.
Okay, so our eyes are binocular vision, right? So it's replicating our human vision. Images hit when we're looking at something. The images hit each other, each of our eyes at a slightly different angle, and they're fused by the brain into one 3D image. In 3D movie making, each camera acts as an eye, and then through the polarized glasses, the left side sees the left, the right side sees the right, and your brain does the rest, putting everything together. So, and what's really interesting is we talked about when we did our Horizons 3D thing, when we made Horizons 3D from Howe's tripod, we found out that the average human eye is separated by about 2.5 inches, and this is really interesting that some of the setups and the cameras that they used here were over 100 feet apart to get the 3D effect. So it's not always about keeping the camera just like a human, which I thought was interesting. I did a lot of research on Lerner and through newspapers.com and found out through a couple interviews and stuff. And I find this fascinating that he said that most people at the time would have been against what he was doing. He said that 3D was really conservative at the time, and he attributes the 3D from the 70s and 80s as a pretty postcard. And he said here's another interesting quote to think about. This came out of people thinking that 3D had to undo the falseness of 2D, right? And prevent eye strain. So undo the falseness of 2D means you've been watching this stuff that's just so false. We have to over accentuate the 3D in order to make it fun for you. And he also found out that through this, by trying to avoid eye strain, past films were causing it because he decided to put the convergence of your eyes not where the action was, but where something was innocuous was going on in the scene. And that was interesting because he was complimented that Magic Journeys was very easy on the eyes, and 3D wasn't really researched very well. And in fact, MIT were doing all this work on mathematical formulas about 3D. And MIT researchers later confirmed actually that he was right. The 3D formulas were full of errors that people were using prior to create stuff. So it's really interesting that, you know, he didn't do any of this math. He just kind of went on what he believed would bring 3D to the film and into the eye and make it easy, which I thought was really, really interesting.
Now, Todd, why was 3D such? It seems like it's, to me, an EPCOT-y thing. But I mean, I know we have it now, but like, yeah. It seems like if there was a movie, it was going to be. I'm just trying to like summarize this in my head, because they didn't want to show something like a normal film a lot of times. They did like the circle vision, they did the 3D. Like, was this just because that was the only tricks they could really pull on a film? Or
I think part of the answer, Todd, might end up being, I'm sure you know, is the 3D prior to this was really bad.
Yeah.
And that's part of why Muppet Vision still works today, because that at the time was the best 4D that I had ever seen.
Yeah.
And that's only 6 years later and a lot of technology advances. But Magic Journeys, as I recall, was particularly well done when most 3D movies were not well done at all.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm trying to think in the time stream where that fit in. Because
that's the thing. Like, there's not like a ton out there, like mainstream, that was
Jaws
common.
3D, and there was a couple made
but in the
70s,
it had really fallen out of favor. It was a 50s and 60s gimmick. The 70s, it was barely used, and mostly used, I think, in the horror genre.
Correct.
In horror B movies as a gimmick. You weren't really finding it. Like, there wasn't 3D versions of Close Encounters and stuff like that were coming out. It didn't really. Jaws 3D in 1983, 84. That was 83, I think. They filmed that at SeaWorld in Orlando. And that was hokey, but it was a better use of the effects than because before you just had that red and green lens. Right. You know, like,
yeah,
it's just weird to me. They selected something that was known as gimmicky, hokey, and it wasn't really mainstream. Was it to plus the attraction? Is that the goal?
Well, I think it was also Lerner trying to do something different. One of the quotes here he says is that he never agreed that 3D should be used to create the illusion of sight. And the reason is because your eye is always moving, right? So instead, you can't replicate that in film. So instead, 3D is there just to create an illusion. So if you really take Magic Journeys apart, and when we talk about it here, the scenes that work is when it's creating the illusion, it's drawing the audience in, or scaring them in some of the scenes, and it's not there to be hokey or just to set up a crazy scene where there's layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. And if you really think about it, in watching Magic Journeys, there are specific points that he just used it for the illusion. And then that was it. There's plenty of scenes where it's really not that interesting, right? It's just some flying scenes that are not that great.
Yeah.
So
to put a little, I do want to bust like one myth about old 3D movies. I think we have this perception that 3D movies were the blue lens and the red lens, and that's not true. Like, when those movies that was part of the process, but by the 1960s, they were shooting full color 3D movies. Hitchcock was going to shoot Dial M for Murder, or did shoot it in 3D, but didn't release it in 3D. They used the same similar setup with polarized lenses. I think the big difference was because you were showing these movies in conventional theaters at that point, nobody was doing two separate film projectors side by side,
right,
each with a high quality image on it. They were using techniques like there was one that used a single 35 millimeter, and they put one image on the top of the frame and one image on the bottom of the frame, which just squeezed, a lot of detail out of it. Right. Or another one where they used anamorphic lenses and basically combined the two images into one single frame of 35 by squishing it, and then used an anamorphic lens on the other side to like widen it back out again. So the innovation was really, and because they were only outfitting two theaters for this, one at EPCOT and one at Disneyland, to run two synced 70 millimeter projectors side by side to get a really super high quality image, that I think was kind of the key difference for that time. And really, this coming out in very early 1983, this was kind of at the forefront of sort of the second generation of 3D movies that was starting to hit.
And that's a perfect segue into the tech. And I think we'll answer, JT, your original question, like, why was this in Epcot? So let's talk about the technology. Like, how complicated was this? So it was extremely complicated. It was composite photography, matting, superimposed computer animation. Some scenes in the film have more than 20 pieces of film overlaid on top of it to create just that scene. Murray apparently had one in mind that would have 125 layers of film, but they talked them down off the ledge. So
it's like the Sgt. Pepper of 3D film.
Yeah, exactly.
I got a vision here.
Yep. It was the first computer-generated 3D film to debut in any Disney park. It featured sharper imaging, and you hit on this, Hal, 75 millimeter film, dual 75 millimeter projectors. It was shown at 75 frames per second compared to the average of 24. So you've got 3 times the amount of film. Now think about that. From a shooting perspective, from an editing perspective, from a projection perspective, that is a lot of work. So this is not just about visual of, oh, wow, there's, some kid's feet coming at me or the dandelions. This is about clear image. This is pre-digital projection, smooth motion, and super, super detail that you just would never see anywhere. So, so here's a couple more little different things about. They had a twin camera system, obviously. Steve Hines of WED and Kodak put that together. It was built in Burbank. And then Disney actually replicated it, built 3 more different rigs for all different kinds of shots. Then Kodak was really the one who pressed it to be shot on 65 or what they call 70. It's really 65 millimeters, and the whole width of the film is 70 millimeters. But the initial plan was actually to use a camera rig that had developed for other films called the Todd AO rig, but it was not capable of achieving the type of 3D desired. So that's why Disney and Steve Hines built their own rig. So one rig was just built for the flying sequences, and the other was designed with the ability to change 3D settings during a shot, and it was used in most of the scenes featuring the boys and the kids and the other actors. So the camera had the ability to shoot in slow motion and high speed. So think about that. That's also, now you can film slow motion and high speed photography. You got 75 frames per second. This is not just, and just so everybody knows, shooting in slow motion and shooting in high speed is not about just slowing the film down or speeding it up after. This is about changing the speed of the film while you are filming. So this is really a lot. This is so groundbreaking. No wonder this project took 2 years. So there was a lot of CG. We're going to talk about the dandelions, the brass ring, the eye. These were all the first time CG was introduced into a film. And here's another interesting thing. The entire film was made with no live sound. All dialogue and sounds were added in post, which it's interesting because now that I watch, I'm like, oh yeah, there's no need for it. It's all ambient and the children laughing in the background and stuff. So
now my question, Todd, is after all of that you listed, did anybody know all this when they went to go see it? Because I feel like that in itself should have been the pre-show showing a making of before, because how long was it? Like 6 minutes?
16 and a half minutes, 17 minutes, yeah.
So you see all this, you're like, oh, that was cool. And then where's the pretzel stand after you just went through all that?
Well, if you had gone to EPCOT Central and did the Studio Computer Review, she would have told you that the soundtrack is on 2-inch tape and piped in from EPCOT Computer Central. So,
yeah, that's insane. All those facts and figures. And now going back, this is what we do. This is what happens to me when I listen to you guys talk about this stuff. Is like, now I wish I would have seen it for real, because you could have known all this in your head, but now we can't.
Right. So a couple more things. Sonoma County was one of the filming locations, and Hal and I were chatting about this before we record here. Those locations were used specifically for the children playing at the beach, running through the fields, walking around wooded paths. This came from a newspaper article I found that said, "Oh, Murray Lerner and Disney will be here," and that was the final phase of shooting. So I have a hunch, and how I think you and I are kind of on the same thing here, is that the kids probably didn't have to go far. It was probably shot on a soundstage somewhere. They took them up to Sonoma, did the outside scenes. The rest of it is all soundstage, and now that we know that we're 20 layers of film, there's so much post processing in this. All right, so we're starting to fall behind in the process of making this film. It's the cutting edge. It's behind schedule. They weren't sure whether it was going to be ready on opening day, and they needed a solution for that. So it was very ambitious, and apparently Murray was a perfectionist. He ate up the film's entire original budget. Still a lot more to shoot. I had to do all the optical visual effects. So actually, they shut production down until a rough cut of the film that was edited by Randy Roberts. He became supervising editor on Law & Order Special Victims Unit, which is interesting. And it was screened for Randy Bright and other Disney executives at the time. And apparently Lerner was also known for not being a very decisive director. He wanted to keep trying different things and doing things over, and Bright and others were demanding that he move things forward. So we have a little story coming up here in a second, so let me set the stage for this. One of the most often remembered 3D effects is when the kite comes up and the young boy is moving across the screen. It feels like it's like, right there. It's one of the first optical effects that was completed, and it was actually completed by Eric Brevig, who went on to work at Industrial Light and Magic and got an Oscar for his work on Total Recall. The shot was a big achievement, and the schedule of Magic Journeys was very tight, as we talked about. And however, there's something interesting that went on with this scene that turned out to be a little bit of a prank. And we had a conversation with Mark Eads the other day, so we're going to let him tell the story about the kite scene.
We get our first optical of what is really one of the best scenes in the movie, and that's the kite. And it's a complicated optical because they had to basically do it all mechanically on optical printers to make this kite, come out, and you're doing it times 2 screens and look, and we're seeing it on a full 3D screen for the first time, and we were able to set it up as a loop so we could look at it over and over again, and it was truly magnificent. And it was basically the crew on Magic Journeys, some of the guys from visual effects, and it really looked great. And Matt Murray, etc. So Murray goes, "Oh, I gotta call Randy Bright." He calls Randy Bright. I gotta have him come over and look at this. It's gonna blow their minds. He called them, and they said they could come over in about an hour and a half. So I told the projectionist, leave it set up. Then, unbeknownst to me at that point, everybody kind of got together and they decided to conspire something. So they got some of the 3D glasses and they made one of them so they both had a right eye polarizer in them. So if you're watching it with just the same polarizer, you can't see any 3D. So I'm back there. They hadn't quite told me yet. They're kind of snickering when they made sure Murray had the glasses and then all the other people get their glasses. I hand them out. And then they start running the loop. And, Randy Bright and Marty Sklar are like, wow, they're like blown away. And Murray starts immediately belly aching. Oh, I don't know what's wrong. Did you guys change something on the projectors? There's no 3D at all. The 3D's gone. We're going to have to rework this, blah, 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 blah. Now, as he's belly aching, I think it was Eric came back and told me what had happened. And I said, oh, God, don't laugh. Because everybody's up there by Murray, and they're turning around and snickering and looking at me. And I'm going, They said, you're going to have to go get Randy and Marty and explain what happened. Great. Murray goes, well, shut it down. I can't keep it going. So we shut it down, and Randy and Marty are like, oh. And so I have to run after Randy and Marty and get them outside. I said, look, I'm here to tell you that the guys have played a practical joke on Murray. And they thought it was hilarious because they knew Murray was challenging. And so I said, can you come back in half an hour? Just walk in. We're not going to change a thing, but we'll make sure Murray has real glasses. I came back in, started it up. Murray's got it. Oh, did you guys readjust the projectors and everything? Oh, yeah, Murray, we took care of it for you. That's the story of 3D as 2D practical joke on Murray Lerner. And everybody swore an oath of secrecy and he never found out.
All right, so we thank Mark for that story, pulling a good one over Murray Lerner there. They decide with Journey into Imagination not ready to open the park. This is a little sidebar here. They decide to create a preview film for Magic Journeys, hosted by JT. Who do you think would host a preview film for Magic Journeys? And it's not the other MJ, because every time we typed MJ into Slack, JT thought we were doing Captain EO with Michael Jackson. This is the MJ that preceded the MJ.
Bob Hope, he did the pre-show.
Good guess.
No.
Excellent guess.
Yeah. It was none other than Ron Schneider as Dreamfinder, actually. So they decided that can't have Journey into Imagination, so we'll make a film. Well, the film's running late, so why don't we make a film about the film and about the attraction to play if we can't have the film and the attraction ready? So we're going to let Ron tell us here in a second, but it was a little 2-minute film that featured Dreamfinder running through backstage and falling down and running through all the attractions. And there's some really neat footage in it from behind the scenes of some attractions I've never seen before. So it was very, very unique. And so it was called Dreamfinder Run. So let's hear Ron here. Will tell us a little about Dreamfinder Run.
About 2 weeks before I was supposed to fly to Florida and move to Florida in September, I get a call so early one morning, Saturday morning, I think it was. They say, Ron, we need you in Florida. I said, I know, I'll be there in 2 weeks. They said, no, we need you there this afternoon. And what happened was, it was in the contract with Kodak that the pavilion was supposed to be open or have something running in it on October 1st. It had to have something. They knew the ride wasn't going to be anywhere near ready. They weren't sure about the ImageWorks, and Murray Lerner, director of Magic Journeys, was not sure that he'd have the film ready. They had to have something in the building. So they were going to shoot a preview video with Dreamfinder and Figment talking about the ride, and they needed to shoot me, the clip that you saw earlier this evening of Dreamfinder with the too long beard walking through the Rainbow Corridor. That was the very first time I was ever in the costume. And they flew me down to Florida that day. I went and we did that shot. And then next day I was back in Los Angeles. We spent 3 days at WED Tahunga shooting a video, a really strange video, directed by Michael Jitlov. Look him up, Gittlov. And I was a big fan of his, and we spent the whole 3 days, me running around WED with all these people, the people who actually did their shows. They undercranked the camera, and I ran everywhere, very, very fast. And everyone around me was moving. It looked like they were moving in regular time, but I was zip, 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 zip. It's very interesting glimpse at what was going on at WED. A couple of weeks after we completed it, I got an invitation to a screening at Disney Studios, and I went, and they had all the people who'd worked on it, and I saw the thing, and I didn't like it at all. The beard was all wrong, and I was overplaying it. And I just went to Mike Jitlov afterward and said, "Thank you very much." And that film's been used 1,000 times in different promotions. If you saw the opening special with Danny Kaye and me and Drew Barrymore, that's the clips that they show while I'm talking. But just like the interview with Brian Gumbel on opening day on the Today Show, I don't watch it a lot.
All right, so thanks to Ron for that. That was actually audio taken from our Retro Magic event in 2019, where he told us about Dreamfinder Run. So can you guys imagine that if the film Magic Journeys did make it, the attraction wasn't ready, this was going to be the entire thing that was open at Journey into Imagination on the first day? It would have been a 2-minute film of Dreamfinder, like every 2 minutes cycling, that and some jumping fountains. That's all.
Well, but if you were, used to the Magic Kingdom, and if you were a Disney Parks person, that's what you were used to. That whole side of Future World, you had one ride, which was the land boat ride. Listen to the Land at that time, because you had the Kitchen Cabaret stage show, and this film and the ImageWorks, which was a playground. There was nothing else over there that was open. So
this is just a delay. That's all it is. All major theme parks had delays. When they opened Disneyland in 1956, nothing worked.
Yeah, but John, if the Pirates of the Caribbean breaks down, the pirates don't eat the tourists.
Hey, wait. So this was in the theater where Captain EO was?
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the theater in a little bit.
Okay.
Yep, that's where it was. So, all right, so it is now late September 1982. We've got another great story here from Mark. The film has been completed. The Technicolor prints are ready. The only problem is they're in California, and they're due to be played the next night at 9 p.m.
And you couldn't download the film back then.
Exactly.
There was no internet.
No digital download. So how did they do it? So let's hear Mark tell us the secret of how they got Magic Journeys ready to roll in less than 24 hours.
I'd never traveled on business before. Now, I'd been to Florida once way back in 74, one again in 75, and then my wife and I honeymooned there in 77. So Magic Journeys was, as I indicated, the most harrowing film, and they really wanted it. Now, we actually weren't really done with it, so some of the visual effects were kind of hurried up a little bit just to get the thing done. And negative was cut, and here we were 6 days out from the opening of EPCOT. We were getting in an answer print on the proper film stock, the Mylar stock, because that's the whole thing that could run through the projectors. And, by then all the web people, they're in Florida. It's got to get there. So I had arranged for a shipment, I thought. And the film came in, we set up, and we're sitting out there, and it's all set up before it gets to run. Bob turns to me and says, Mark, if this film looks good, you're getting on a plane tonight with it to get it there, so it'll run tomorrow night for all the executives from all the sponsors in the Walt Disney Company. I am? Yes. Donna, who's his secretary, is already making the travel arrangements. Okay. So we look at the film, it looks great. Okay, go see Donna. She's got 2 first-class tickets for you. And I go, 2? Yes, we want you to hand carry the film. They won't fit the overhead compartments, so you're going to have to put it in the seat next to you. Great. Now, I'd never been on a business trip before, so I didn't know what to expect. My immediate supervisor is explaining to me how you get the rental car, where you get it. I knew how to get out to Walt Disney World. I knew where you got a parking pass. And then you get the parking pass, and he said, you go in this way, and he gave me directions. And the projection head was in the China Pavilion. They had an office up there. I have to hand carry these? Oh, yeah. Oh, by the way, you fly to Atlanta, and you have to change planes to the one to Orlando. There's no nonstops. I got to carry this? These things aren't light. I mean, they're like, the width of my body plus a little bit. 70 millimeter film is, 70 millimeter plus sprockets. And, it's about 18 minutes long. One can's heavy. Imagine having to carry 2 pit cans. 70 millimeter, that big, doesn't have the kind of carry things that you would have for 35 millimeter. Okay, I call my wife, say, honey, I'm getting on a plane tonight. Pack my stuff. I'm going out of LAX. The flight leaves at like 10. And she's looking at these film cans. Well, you want to put those in the suitcase? No, I can't. I have to check the baggage. I have to carry these. Really? And I even had a handwritten note from Bob Jabot, signed on Disney letterhead, to show to the flight people, etc., that this is what this is. I had to open. I didn't want to, but I had actually a roll of tape with me so I could retape it in case I had to. It was labeled. Open it up in case they want to see it. Now this is way before TSA, but here's this guy carrying what essentially looks like 2 landmines. I get to the airport. My wife walked. We had our newborn, our oldest kid. He was born in July. He's with me. Back then, you could walk all the way out to the gate. So they walk out with me, thank God, because I had to check my bag. And I'm still carrying this stuff, though what we did to get me to the gate was we had a little stroller for the little one. So he was being real good. So she carried him, and we put the film in the stroller, pushed it out to the gate. It's the only time I could do that. Check in there, and I've got this. And I show the flight attendant. She says, okay, leave it here on the desk. And she looked at it. So it was there on the desk. And I don't want to walk away too far. So we stay right there until I can board the flight. First class gets boarded first, along with any babies. So, as soon as I could be boarded, okay, I go up there. And when you're carrying that, I'm going to show you, but sorry if I have to back away. This film, figure it's a lot bigger than this. I'm walking like a duck, the jetway, and into the airplane, which was not a wide body because they didn't do the wide bodies as much back then. I had a boarding pass for me, and I had a boarding pass for the damn film right next to me, which the flight attendants thought was funny as hell. And of course, we had to strap them in. So they got some kind of extra strap thing just to make sure they wouldn't go anywhere, easily. And I fly, I'm like, taking the red eye, I had experienced that once and knew it was going to be hard to sleep. Would you like a beverage before we take off? Sure. What do you got? Oh, anything. I think I got myself a screwdriver. I was a little bit of a neophyte on drinking back then. I had a couple of those before we even pushed back. And then, we push back, we take off. I don't sleep. I'm like tense, nervous. This thing has to run at 9 p.m. the next night, right? And so we get to Atlanta. Okay, the luggage I have to assume is going to change planes okay. Walk out carrying these 2 cans of film with the letter in my pocket from Bob Jabot. Atlanta's not an easy airport to walk through when you're carrying something big like that. And it's not as busy at that time of the morning when you land, because it was like 4 a.m. Eastern time or something like that. I don't remember. And of course, we're at one end of this building. Thank God I didn't have to go to another building. And the plane I'm getting on is at the other end of this building. I get there and we got about 30 minutes before boarding. I go through the same rigmarole with the flight attendant. She looks in. Yep. Okay. I retape it. She said, you want to leave it here? Yes, but I've got to keep an eye on it. Yes, I understand. Do the same thing. I have to go, and it's a narrower plane, and I have to get on board. I get on board first. I'm in first class. We do the whole thing with it buckled in and all of this. Take off for Orlando, get there at like 6 something. Mm-hmm. And of course, then it's get off the plane. And I'm lugging my way through this brand new Orlando airport, blah, 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 get on a people mover. People were looking at me. And I did not sleep. Get to the preview center, get my parking pass. I get out to EPCOT, and the WED offices were in trailers behind the China Pavilion. I get there, and oh, you're here. Yeah. Can somebody call Tom Joswiak and let him know I'm here? We will. His office, yeah, I know where it is, but I don't know how to get there. Well, bring the film, come with us, we'll show you. And they point to the door. Tom comes down, opens it, and it's like, nope, don't go anywhere, Mark. Get back in your car. What? Yep, go. So he goes with me. We drive, and you couldn't drive across because they're pouring cement all over the place. There was concrete pours going on every day up to and including September 30th. Drive all the way around to the back of the Imagination Pavilion, carried it in, and then Tom goes, what is the exact length of the film? I don't know, with our weird leader and all that. I never had a chance to measure it. Well, guess what you get to do now? Then the first thing we do is we get one of them out, and we have to I'm wearing gloves. We have to measure the length of it from point to point, because the film runs in loop cabinets. Now, this is about 8 a.m. that I get there, and I start measuring, and we measure it. And of course, they had a rough idea of how long it was, but they had to reconfigure the loop cabinet to the precise length with the dummy stock they had in there. Okay, so they start working on that. Don't go anywhere. We're going to run a test show as soon as we get it pulled in. How long is it going to take? About an hour and a half. Can I go get something to eat? No, you're not allowed to leave. I think they were joshing with me, but I was whatever. And I just kind of sit and watch them do their thing. Then they get the film pulled in, and they could only pull one in at a time. They started one, and then they got the other one set up and started it, but they have to watch it because they don't want it to run out. They need to splice it and all that. They got it spliced, and apparently they had the program, because all of Disney stuff in the parks is automated. So there's software that runs it. Okay, we're ready to run a show. Mark, can you come down to the theater with us? Why? You're the only one who knows what sound sync is on this film. Okay, go down into the theater. They push a start button. Lights didn't go out at the right place. Doors were staying open. It was just, if everything could go wrong the first time, it did. So the film's in sync with each other, but not with the audio. Now, the Magic Journey it's really hard to tell how out of sync it is, because there's not a lot of what you would call hard sync points. Basically, the only one you really have is when the witch goes, psst. That came around, and boy, you could tell it was out. And then, well, Mark, could you tell how much? I don't have a pocket watch. I don't have a stopwatch or anything. They said, well, how much do you think? Oh, I said, it was at least 5.5 seconds off. And you got all this other stuff going on. Oh, yeah, because the programmer was in there making notes, etc. We're going to have to fix it. Okay, how long is that going to take? Well, give the programmer a minute. He does some calculations for about 30 minutes. Okay, I'm going to have to burn about 24 EPROMs for that. Okay, how long does that take? Well, 24 EPROMs, we can do 8 at a time. It takes about an hour per one, per set of 8. You're kidding. 3 hours? Yeah. Okay. So they get to work on it. I'm wired, right? Even though I've been up all night, I've had nothing to eat other than what I got on the flight down, which wasn't much because I just was trying to, as best I could. And when you look like you're trying to sleep, they don't bother you. So I said, well, I'm supposed to meet Rick Rothschild over at the Energy Pavilion in about an hour and a half. And where do I get food? And they told me it was over the back of the Odyssey restaurant was the employee cafeteria over there. Okay, I'll come back. Don't have a radio. And they said, well, you better be back because you don't have a radio. And you're it. What's that mean? If it doesn't run by 9 p.m. tonight, you're going to be the designated person. Why me? So I leave the pavilion and I'm kind of walking slow because it's like, this is my first time at EPCOT, right? It's looking at all the cement trucks and all the gardening that's still being laid. And I get in, I walk through part of Communicore, and then I'm walking around the big fountain there in the middle, right? And as I get around to the other side, I'm going to then go to the Energy Pavilion, right? And who's walking towards me? Randy Bright and Ron Miller. And I just kind of walk by them, and they walk by me, and they nod. I don't think I go more than 4 steps when I hear these 2 bass voices go, Mark Eads. I turn around, and there's Randy Bright and Ron Miller pointing at me like death. They in unison, they conspired. It was kind of a practical joke, I guess. And they go, Magic Journeys will run at 9 p.m. tonight. And I kind of go, well, having a few technical, Magic Journeys will run at 9 p.m. tonight. Okay, yeah, it will. They keep going. I just sit there. Should I go on to it? Nope, to hell with it. I won't even get food. I go right back to the pavilion. I tell Tom and a couple others what had happened. Yeah, this is a big, and they tell me, Tom Joe's React tells me, this is a big deal, Mark. All these executives, corporate presidents, chairmen of the board, a bunch of VPs, etc., are going to be here, not just from Kodak, but from every single sponsor of EPCOT. Okay. So I hang out. Not much you can do when they're reprogramming other than suck your thumb. So they get it done. They plug in the EPROMs. We run a test show again. This is about, I want to say around 2:30 in the afternoon by the time they get all this done. Of course, the film is still out of sync with the audio, but there were a couple of us really watching it, trying to get it closer. It was about 2.5 seconds out still. And there were still some problems with some doors and a couple of lights were not right, etc. Programmers are making their little note. And they go back to work. How long this time? Give me a few minutes. Okay. And I told them how much the film was off. And okay, it's going to be another 2 hours. I'm pacing. I go outside a little bit to get some air. I still haven't had any food. So it gets to be, 7 o'clock. They run a show again. Everything was really close. Of course, the film was still out of sync. Okay, real quick fixes. They only had to burn 4 EPROMs. It's going to take an hour. Great. 4:45, run a test show. Everything's working fine. The film's a little out of sync. Okay, we don't want to burn another EPROM. It takes too long. Well, you should. Okay, they burned one more. They did one more tent. Film's still out of sync. It's 8:15. And I said, it's this much out. And I go, can we just move the projector? I think it's about 4 frames. And then resync it and run a test show? Yeah, that's probably easier. Let's do that. They run a test show. Still a couple frames out. Couple more frames, sync it, run a test show. It's 8:45. Perfect, in sync, everything's working. And of course, the film has to roll around, which takes some time. And it had just finished. And damned if all those executives didn't walk into the pre-show space there right at 9 o'clock. Of course, they're guided by tour guides, et cetera, et cetera. So we start the show so they can see Kodak's pre-show. It runs, it's great. Everybody comes in. I'm like with my eyes because I'm trying to just not fall asleep. I'm not, but I'm so wired. The show runs and blew everybody away. They're all like reaching for the kite and all this other stuff. It ends, gets, standing ovation, etc. I'm like, I go outside and they all come out and Randy spots me and goes, "Mark, you pulled it off," shakes my hand. "Look, if you go over to here, I think it was at American Adventure, there's a party you can go to, I'll tell them you can." "Randy, I haven't had any sleep or food." "Well, I haven't even checked into my hotel room yet." "Okay, I'll be back tomorrow. Yeah, we want you to go look at all the films, see what's going on, blah, blah, blah. Have your wife come down." "Okay." So I hadn't even thought about asking about permission for that because I had to get the film there. I went over to the Contemporary and they had held the room, nice room in the old North Wing, right where it makes a turn. So it's a huge room. It's not a suite. It's just one. It's one of the biggest rooms. And I'm hungry as hell. The only place open at that time of night, I guess other than a bar, which I wasn't as familiar with back then, it was the snack bar in the arcade right there at the north end of the main building. Yeah. I go there. They're like almost ready to shut down. It's almost 11 and they were going to shut down at 11. I got some cheap ass sandwich and some chips and a drink. I go back to my room, eat them, and I crashed. I didn't get up till about 10:30 the next morning. So that's the saga of the first class trip of the Magic Journeys 3D film print.
All right, so quite a story there. We did ask Mark if he perhaps ate the meal for the second film, for the film next to him, but he doesn't recall. He thinks he just tried to sleep.
But the film does still have 2,500 frequent flyer miles that it hasn't used yet.
That's right. So looking to cash those in anytime.
What's crazy is he carried the 70 millimeter ones.
Yeah.
And you were just talking about the size and the frame rate and all that, and that had to be some pretty large canisters.
It totally had to be. I'm almost on look up here. What is the weight of 70 millimeter film, and then the length that it would have been?
I'm surprised you don't have this figure already. Like you got, what was it, 70 frames per second, and the
right. So you got we would have to do a little bit of
how many seconds was
here.
it? Do the math
for the benefit of people at home. He did pantomime for us the physical look of carrying those things, so we have a general idea of what it looked like.
And then the early 80s baby stroller holding them as well through the airport.
Right. Alrighty, well, let's talk a little bit about the music and get into the pre-show. So, the music was done none other by, gentlemen, the Sherman Brothers. Who else would you get to write some catchy tunes? And they made 2 songs. One was Magic Journeys, and the other one was Making Memories, which played here in the pre-show. So the pre-show area, like we've all gotten used to over the years, is a slanted floor, do not sit, even though everybody tries to sit, and as soon as the slideshow started. But it was a slideshow with 8 projectors called Making Memories, and the song, very, very catchy tune. It's really interesting if you ever listen to the lyrics and then tie it to the actual show, you'll find that the lyrics progress in time and they talk about posing, and then they go to ad hoc daily life and personal events. And also too, what they did is in the pre-show, the slides started with early photos, progressed, the quality got better, black and white, early color, and modern photos. But there is an interesting line at the end. Do you remember what's the very last line?
Look at the birdie.
That's right. Does anybody know why that was thrown in?
Was there a photo element to the?
There is. It's a really interesting photo element to this. So apparently there was a gentleman by the name of C.W. Davis, and he had been training a live canary to sing at his direction to relax a subject who, for photography, would have to remain still and in a fixed position for a long time while the camera took the photo. So apparently entrepreneurs kind of got wind of this, and they made this brass mechanical bird that was operated pneumatically with a bulb. And they would say, look at the birdie, focus on the birdie, whatever, when taking photography. And there are these really kind of ornate brass birds. And when you squeezed it, it would kind of just tilt back and forth a little bit. So that's where the look at the birdie comes from. So it was to get everybody's attention, but actually goes further back to a live bird. So I think we need to have some live birds at our next event for all of our photos.
In a photo booth, yeah.
A photo booth. Look at the live birds, So I found that really interesting.
I've now found one of the brass birds, and I'm looking
aren't they
at
cool?
a photo
They're really
of it.
neat looking.
I always knew what the expression was, and like a photographer would like mime a bird with their hand. Look at the birdie,
Yeah.
But
so I just found that fascinating. It's just so cool that some stuff comes out like that when you.
That's funny. They did use a lot of didn't they say hold your breath and say cheese is one of the lines too? So they used a lot of the photography things that were.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that pre-show. That was good.
It's a very catchy tune.
It is.
Yeah, and it was funny to turn around and look at all the slides.
Yeah.
Going off. Like if you ever did manage to catch this when it was running, until if you turned around, there was a booth behind you. There was kind of a low wall that would separate you from this, so that way you couldn't stand so close to get in front of the projectors. But you could literally see just these banks of these slide projectors, which
I'm sure were Kodak carousels.
I'm sure they were carousels. You could see it, yeah.
Since that was the sponsor.
And oh my gosh!
But yeah, it's one of the few times you can lay a ragtime style tune on me and I won't cringe, because I generally dislike ragtime music, but I enjoy that, making memories.
Yeah.
And now think about it, guys. This is 1982, right? We're still in the era of film. It's really a commercial. Go out, buy a camera, buy film, snap pictures while you're here.
100%.
You could buy them there.
Yeah, it was a Kodak commercial is really what it was. It was really neat.
They were getting their $30 million worth.
Yeah,
they were. I mean, and the amazing thing is that continued forward. As it got into Captain EO and then Honey, I Shrunk the Audience, it was still a slideshow, way up into the 1990s, which is mind-boggling.
Now, true or false? The pre-show included a shot of Dreamfinder and Figment.
Yes.
You are correct, Hal. Very
In
well.
one of the still photos, there was, I think, a drawing of them. I don't think it was a photo. I'm trying to remember now.
Yeah, I just have here that one of the images had Dreamfinder.
It did. I think it was. I think it was a drawing of them. If I'm okay, guys. I know there's a few people who have seen this show that can write in. Erica Dade, I'm looking at you, because I think she's a big fan too. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that was about 8 minutes or so you would spend in there.
That's a slide set, by the way. I'd love to get my hands on.
Oh man, yeah, and you know what? There's really no footage of it at all. There's a couple of the ones that replaced it, with, True Colors. Martin's vid has some of it, but it's very green. It's really hard to see. It's really kind of a poor. Hopefully someday, but yeah, Brian, keep your eyes out for that. It'd be great. We'll recreate. We'll get 8 slides together. We'll get it all together. All right, so the theater, we are going through the pre-show. Like I said, that's about 8 minutes, so it was perfectly timed to let 8 minutes of people filling it. You run it for 8 minutes. You've got your 16 minutes covered, and you move into the theater. The theater was 592 seats, a 54-foot wide screen. So we're going to now get into the film, and we have to cue our opening music. All right, so we're going to walk through the film here. Now, gentlemen, I sent you earlier today Hal's tripod copy of it, which I think is decent for watching it. I think it gives the image of the film probably one of the best copies out there, Hal, too, I got to say. So we'll make sure our listeners see that. So our opening shot, we've got 5 children, 2 boys and 3 girls, walk through a grove of flowering trees, and they comment, it looks like snowflakes. It's a beautiful morning. let's go to the beach. And my favorite, ow, that hurts, as they bump into each other. So again, all this dialogue was added later.
So I will tell you, when that shot, when the movie opened with that crane shot down through the trees, people gasped in the movie theater, because I mean, it's, if you can pick, for those of you who haven't seen it, if you can picture like trees on two sides with like one of those, you know, parallel infinity things where it looks like it's like greenery kind of making a road down the center. So there's flowers real close up to the camera. There's the trees like going all the way off to the background. I mean, this shot was made for 3D, which means that if you watch it in 2D, it looks just kind of boring.
Yeah, it's not nearly as exciting. So the kids race through a field of flowers. The blonde boy, who's really turns out to be the main character, we see him a lot, and he's the focus of this. One of the kids suggests that they sit down, they look up at the clouds, and they call out what they see. You know, I see a clown, I see this. And that really starts to foreshadow what the audience is going to see later in the film.
Right.
And this reminds me of, like, have you ever had a day where, like, you go to the grocery store and you're picking up broccoli, and then you have like a dream about picking up broccoli the next day? This is exactly what it's doing here, right? It's foreshadowing, it's like the dream.
What an amazing coincidence.
Yes. So it's the seed, it's seeding it. So, and with that, the theme song for the film begins to play. Just an ordinary day, all at once you're on your way to a place that cannot be, no one knows what turns So our main child, he picks up a dandelion and blows it. And here's one of the first key CG effects, right? The seeds fly out all in front of you. And this, now what we would call kind of, what do you say? How the eye? It's just not perfect, right? It's a CG eye, and it's young in its CG years.
Yeah,
right? It's not perfect.
I mean, it's very advanced for the time. 1980. I mean, if you think about the state of computer graphics in 1982, it's an extremely impressive shot.
Yeah,
but next to today,
it's not. Yeah,
it
pales in comparison.
I would say it is, similar in quality to what we saw from Pixar in 1994 with Toy Story.
Right.
Yep.
And even maybe even a little cruder than that too. Maybe more like Tin Toy or even pre-Tin Toy.
Although the shading is, very smooth through the whole thing. I think that's the thing that kind of gives it away as computer right now is like there's no texture to the skin. Like the eye is textured with the iris and but the skin itself is like, it's kind of Fong shaded rather than, anything fancier than that. But
right.
Still, I mean, an incredible thing to pull off at the time.
Yeah.
Compare it to Tron. Tron came out in 82. That same era.
Different type of use, I think.
Well, here's the thing. Like, Tron didn't attempt to do shading, really. I mean, a little bit on the well, I take that back. They did do some shading on the tanks and on the light cycles and stuff. I'd say slightly better than Tron, probably. But the thing to keep in mind is, as Mark told us in the interview, is he had access to like the best computer graphics people in the country at that point, with his involvement with SIGGRAPH, which is kind of like the special interest group for people that were into computer graphics at that time. And that group still exists. So, it was a very tight-knit community. We talked about how SIGGRAPH really helped the DNA sequence in Horizons and how those people were involved. And so, there were a handful of people in the United States that were doing this kind of level of work at that time. And, Mark was in contact with all of them, so he could kind of pick and choose, who could do this.
Yeah. And the results were great. So we get into a computerized star field after the eyes, and I'm not going to admit, it gets a little trippy here with the music and the kaleidoscope and the zoom in and the zoom out.
And that part is very Tron, actually. It's like,
yeah, it is. It is, because it's a little bit of grids.
Yeah, of the move into the computer when Burgess is sucked in.
Exactly.
Just a little more organic.
And this is probably the next whoa moment, right? The title sequence where the Magic Journey title rolls out over the audience in front of you.
Magic journeys, magic journeys.
This is interesting. It was the longest computer animated shot ever done. It took 7 straight days of 24-hour rendering for the shot. And I read, apparently in the Sherman Brothers book, they claim that it cost $500,000 back in 1981. Wow. So take that for what it's worth. But 7 entire week to render, 10 seconds, 12 seconds, something like that.
As a person who studied computer graphics in college, I'm going to try to put on my thinking cap of how this was accomplished. So when the letters come out, they're solid. They kind of go off screen in an arc, and when they come back in front of you, they're transparent. So you can see the text continue to come out. So I'm going to guess they did the computer version of a Texas switch there, where they had the solid stuff going off screen. It was replaced by a transparent model as it came on screen. And then as it comes off screen and goes back on the screen again, it's replaced by the solid version. Because you didn't have the kind of control that you have today over being able to say I want to take this at this point and change it into this thing. Things were very, very crude.
Now answer me this from the idiot's perspective here. If they're rendering on a computer back then, how did they get it to the film? What did they do?
There was print type system, so right? There was a special machine that it was basically a tiny, as high of a density television set as you could, and then there was a camera pointed at that. At this case, it was probably shot. I don't know if this was shot in 70 or 35 or how they did it, but we had a similar setup in college. So picture a very high resolution screen. I think the best ones that you could get at the time were 4K, 2K was also common. And then you had an actual 35 millimeter camera sitting on top of that. And that was computer controlled, and it would paint up one frame, however long it took to do that, because there were no still storers then. So it would live render the entire image. When it was ready, it would signal to the camera, okay, take the picture. It would take one frame, advance to the next one, and start painting the next frame up. And it would just go through that process over and over again until you shot every scene. So it's almost like doing stop motion on a television camera, or taking stop motion pictures of a TV screen.
So I thought you were going to say they bootlegged it. They filmed the computer screen with them. But it's interesting. My brain thinks okay, you make it digital, now it stays digital. It's like they had to add a step after this, what was it, a week of rendering, and then convert it to a film.
Yeah, there was, I mean, that I think that rendering time he's talking about, probably once you got out of the test phase, that would have been, they would have rendered it and shot it. I don't think they would have done it twice if they could have helped it.
Yeah, probably all the test phase was probably a wireframe and just getting it to test it. Yeah, low res.
They probably did a couple of short tests, and then after that, they just you cross your fingers and let it go, and you see what you got when it's done, and then you send it out for processing, and then you wait,
and you wait,
and
you can't see it for another week.
It's why you saw a lot of late 70s, early even to mid 80s films where they substituted or tried to fool you with animation. Hand animation instead of computer graphics, animation that looked like computer graphics.
Right.
I'm thinking of Monty Python's The Meaning of Life, and in the middle of Eric Idle's, which the kidney donation song, the Universe song, and they go through this sequence that looks all computer generated, but there's no way that it's computer generated because it's 2 minutes long.
Yeah, there's a great story about making the movie Escape from New York.
With Kurt Russell, yeah.
So there's a scene in it where they do this computer-generated fly-through of how he's going to go land on the building. And what they ended up doing is they had shot miniatures of their New York City, and then they realized there was no way they could actually afford to have it computer done. So they painted the city model black and then put tape, like white tape, on all of the buildings to create outline buildings and then outlines on the buildings. And then they just shot that using traditional film and then did some coloring afterwards.
That's crazy.
And it worked.
That's crazy.
Looked great.
Yeah. So our next scene here, the kids have finally made it to the beach that was suggested. We've got seagulls flying overhead, and a couple of the gulls drift towards the screen. I guess if this was a slapstick comedy, one of the gulls would have like pooped on the audience, right? That would have been. But one of the gulls becomes that kite. So this is the famous kite scene. And then also the kite was featured in the poster, right? When it played at the Magic Kingdom later on, which we'll talk about. That was the big thing, which is an odd. Oh, there's other things that could be the pinnacle moment in this film, but there's a lot of them that you probably wouldn't choose, which we'll talk about you'll get the idea later on. And this is the kite scene we were talking earlier about. So the kite then blends into the sky and then turns into a lionfish underwater. The blonde boy comes towards the screen flying as this water then turns back into the sky. And he's got his, he's flying with his arms outstretched, because if you can fly, you need lift with your wings out. I guess that's the only possible way, if we are humans, we could fly. And he starts to fly over snowy mountains and waters and outcrops. And the shots vary from head on looking at the kid, and then to one of the other famous shots is looking at his feet, where his sneakers and legs are sticking out into the audience. And a lot of the shots are very early reminiscence of Soren, like when you take the kid away from in some of the scenes. And how you did some digging, you found out where some of these scenes were shot, right?
There's a scene that looks like there's some salt outcroppings coming out of the ground. And my guess, based on proximity, is that was shot at Mono Lake in California. Kind of off in the desert a little bit, so much like Salt Lake City, where they have a salt lake there, and you get these strange formations that occur when the water goes away. So I think logistically that's probably a likely spot for that one to happen.
Cool. So now we transition a little bit.
Wait, I do have to say one thing here though.
Yeah.
So when that bird came up, it's funny that you talked about how he really wanted to see the audience kind of interact with this stuff. I mean, this is the point in the film where like everyone from the age of 4 to 94 would reach into the air and try to grab the bird, because they could not fathom that what they were seeing was a 3D projected image.
And that's a nod to the 75 frames per second, right? The 70 millimeter reality. It just brought it that much closer to you, right?
And there were a couple of things, but that being the first kind of like real heavy duty beauty shot, and it just sits there in front of your face for like 5 and 6 seconds. Like, it was amazing. You would look out on the audience and you would see people just laughing, and that was a real high point for that thing, and that just blew people's minds.
So the scene changes, and now he's kind of like This is like a Fabio scene, right? He's all of a sudden riding this beautiful white horse galloping down. He's riding it bareback, and he's riding. This kid can ride a horse. This had to be in the job description. We need a kid who can ride a horse at a pretty good clip because he's moving. He's definitely moving. This is this next part here. I think is probably one of the great transitions in the film. The horse kind of gets up on its hind legs and does this noise, and his legs are going out towards the audience, and then all of a sudden it fades into looking up at a merry-go-round horse going up and down, and the legs are almost exact position as it fades in and out. I thought that was a really, really cool transition. So now all the kids are back with our main character here, and all of a sudden we see this spinning brass ring that's hovering right out in front of the audience. And look, we're just what Hal said earlier about the bird. You're all reaching out for this ring because it's amazing, and that was definitely computer animated. You guys know the history of what the brass ring. I found always this really interesting that they put something so old timey into a relatively modern film.
Our one pier in Ocean City still has it, and of course Knoebel still has it. Yeah,
it still has it.
Yeah.
Okay, I've never been where because Disney. I'm sure the one at Olympic Park used to have it. They never have it. So
I can tell you, I had no freaking idea what that was.
I didn't either.
when I saw the movie.
So maybe it's depending on where you live. If you live near the cool parks, like Brian does, you get the brass ring. So the idea was that there was this kind of a little ramp that these rings were lined up in, and most of them were iron, and every now and then one or two per ride were made of brass. So if you would stretch your arm out and try to put your finger out and catch this ring that was sitting at the end of this little ramp, and if you got a brass ring, you could use it for a free ride on the merry-go-round. And this really goes back to the late 1880s, 1890s into the early 1920s when this was popular. So
they have that at our zoos.
So you have a brass ring too?
Well, it's like a ring that's just hanging there. Like I think it's symbolic, and then if you stop the ride at the end and you land there, you get a free ride.
So if you spin it really hard and see what you land on, that's like.
Oh, interesting. So yours actually is suspended like the one.
It's hanging there like a sign. It's just like a ring, and it's like if your animal ends up being the one that when the ride stops, being there, almost like roulette. It's like, oh, you get the ride this time next to one.
Because the old style one is that they're in a dispenser, right? And they kind of roll down this dispenser. You put your finger through, you grab it, and the next one would roll down for the next person to take. So
what a strange tradition.
Yeah, I should have looked up where it really came from, but it was probably kind of a ploy to get more people to ride. You're going to give one free ride per ride. That's load up the merry-go-round.
Oh, interesting. So there is a version of this where not only do you pick up the brass ring on the carousel, there is a target that you can throw the brass ring at. It's like a clown face with like a hole where the mouth is, and if you throw it into the hole properly, it's like then you get a prize.
Oh no! I thought you just grab it. No,
but that's it. Some of them have it where you just grab it. Yeah, some of you just grab it and you get a free one. But like this thing on the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk, like upped the ante.
Yeah, really. You got to turn it in for a token, and you got to go to the next window and turn that in for your prize.
Oh my gosh, that's nuts.
That's interesting. Well, our hero in the film, the blonde boy, he grabs it, looks at it, and he says, throws the ring towards the screen. It comes spitting out, and it becomes what else? The moon.
That is a really nice transition, though.
Yeah, it's perfectly set.
Yeah, this is all CG. So our floating real brass ring is replaced by a CGI brass ring that then does like a whole morph thing where it gets bigger and bigger from the inside, and then eventually turns into a sphere, which then they do like a wipe to probably was a physical model of the moon, and it's actually really well done, this transition. And then like I'm gonna say this seems very much like a nod to Mary Poppins.
It does, right? So when one of the kids though is kind of giving a prelude to what's happening, he goes, it's dark and scary, right? And then the kids are riding around the moon on their carousel animals while wearing costumes, a la Mary Poppins, like Hal said, and chanting. And then bats start flying in front of the moon. So we have a very creepy witch appears and grabs out towards the audience. Another one of these, great effects where the prickly fingers are coming right at you. Very reminiscent of the film that replaced it, right? Captain EO.
Oh, right.
She comes out, you think I'm pretty, right? And the hands come out at you.
There are definitely more than a few instances of cheap 3D tricks.
Oh, yeah.
In this.
We've got a couple coming up here that really do this. So she starts to back away, and her lightning causes all these eerie masks that seem to go on for about one mask too many, right? And now we're really getting into the trippy stuff. So we're not making this up, but a feline type mask comes up, and we start to hear a meow, and it transitions to the boy in a room with a cat. And this is a really quick scene. He just reaches out for it, and JT, what do you think the cat would turn into? What would you do if you're reaching out for a cat?
Frog.
A frog?
Frog is wrong.
A frog is wrong. It turns into a sphinx, and then it gets immediately transitioned to a circus where the lion starts running through a flaming hoop. So I don't know how you get from masks to cat to sphinx to circus. I get the cat to sphinx thing. I can kind of get that. And then you get the lion coming at you through the flaming hoop. Maybe the sphinx is to a lion. It's a
so
lot.
I think the masks are very quickly moving through cultures, because I see a Thai, and then it goes to the Olmec head from Mexico, and then I think something from Papua New Guinea, and then you get the cat representing Egypt. But what's funny is they landed, or maybe it's China, because that room you're in for like just a quick second looks very
Oriental.
Asian.
Yeah. It really is. It's really into the red door and all the paintings on it, and there's a cat statue or something behind him too, which is really interesting.
Did you find any of the detail about the model for Egypt from the Sphinx that they made?
I did not. So if you've got that, tell the story.
I'm gonna go by memory here, but I recall reading an article about this, and I want to say it's very briefly on screen, but this set was enormous. I want to say the Sphinx was probably 10 or 12 feet high, and the depth of the room was probably 50 or 60 feet in order to do this shot and have it be effective in 3D. So, I mean, it's for something, we always talk about how stuff, it takes months and months and months, and they do a shot that lasts for 5 seconds, and that's what Disney did back then. It's like they built this enormous set for this very 5, 6, 7 seconds.
You get a quick snippet of it first, and the zoom in, and it's over.
Yeah,
they spared no expense.
That's right. Yeah, very similar to Horizons, right? The end of Horizons, how much did they spend on that? Right. For those 30 seconds, the giant
a year and a half for
30 seconds.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got the lion through the flaming hoop. This is where we go a little low on the 3D gags, right? So we got trapeze and tightrope artists performing. The kids are afraid the performers will fall, and they say it's scary. So what do? You have one of the tightrope walkers fall. I mean, naturally, right? The kids are scared of it, so the gentleman slips off. The kids gasp, but then, hey, tragedy is brought forth with a little bit of happiness. What more than a clown with a giant horn that blows it out into the front of the faces in the audience, This is where I think I pretty much lost it because I don't know, gentlemen. I'm not a fan of clowns. I consider them concentrated evil. There's something creepy about them. I just can't take it. So
every month we're getting into clowns.
We did. Oh my God!
Last month
we had Bozo. We had
stuck on some clown from
right.
The 60s,
we had Keister Coaster. We were talking about clowns. Oh my gosh! Yeah.
We're talking about clowns at Pleasure Island. Or...
So the problem here is that we get more clowns. They come out of the little clown cars and they do really these gags that are really suited to 3D. You know, carrying a long ladder. They play the trombone. The boxing glove at the end of it. They're throwing pies. And then we do the giant stilt walker, which is really an interesting angle for this guy. He's got, like, these are major stilts. It's actually really impressive. And the kids are like, oh.
I can't believe you left out the little person dressed as a baby who gets, like, knocked out of a baby carriage and then squirts the audience with a giant baby bottle.
I only had room for so much, but thanks, Al, for adding it in.
That's the epitome of class and quality.
It's like,
I do think it's funny there's another 3D pie, like Muppet Vision in this.
There's a couple gags that just, they throughout the years, they
this
keep on
one wasn't
giving.
remote control, though, JT. It was not a remote control
good.
pie.
That's a good point.
Good point. What kind of pie was it?
So the kids are concerned that the must be really, really scary up there. His legs are bony. He'd make a good basketball player. And the view here is from the floor. The kid's looking up, and they claim he's getting taller. And then now we have balloons starting to fall down on us. Here's another little trippiness here. The circus now has transitioned to become tiny, and the figures of clowns and such have turned into mechanical automatons, and the boy is now watching them. Flying mechanical toy appears. The boy, he tries to reach out and get them. They go up towards the ceiling, and suddenly we see the galaxy in the sky, and the boy asks, "Do you believe in magic?" and is suddenly back at the circus and joins some other children watching a magician. So the magician does his little thing, pulls out a dove out of his hat, waves his wand, and the boy appears at the edge of the hat and falls.
What am I doing here? Oh no!
This actually reminds me of something out of like Dreamfinder's. Was it How Up an Image Works, where you could act, right? Where you're shrunken down, and you're like jump off. It really reminded. What was it called? I can't remember. Dreamfinder's acting.
The Dreamfinder School of Drama.
School of Drama. That's it. Thank you.
But yeah, this is the one place where it's. I think the optical effect of him being shrunk down and on the hat is probably a little obvious.
Yeah. So he falls off the edge of the hat. He drifts through space and puts his arms out again and begins to fly. And now we're getting towards the end of the film, and he appears to be going backwards in time. His eye that we talked about earlier is shown again from the moment he blew the dandelion, and they play the film backwards, so the dandelion seeds come out from behind you and go back onto the flower.
I wonder if this space sequence was all done in CGI too.
Probably. I
bet, you know what? I bet it was, which would have been, again, not something that loads and loads of work for something that was very, very fast.
Right. I mean, it's not super complicated. I mean, there's a little bit, but you wonder about the galaxy, right? That's definitely some sort of CG work as he's going there. So we transition here to the final scene after the dandelion, and we are back in the field, and his friends are saying, "Oh, I'm so tired," and I think it's implying that he fell asleep, right? And they start running back through the field and the groves of trees. So the camera pans up from those trees, and the film title, Magic Journeys, comes back up, swoops over us again, and then it's followed by none other than the Kodak logo.
You get the sense with all of these expensive shots and these stories literally from every pavilion in Epcot that somewhere it took them until the park was done for someone to work out that, hey, the sponsors are paying for half of this, so who cares? Just do whatever we need to do.
That's right.
That the math didn't quite compute. Because there's stories like this from every pavilion where they just did insanely expensive things for no reason.
Right.
For no good reason, anyway.
You could have blue screened these with kids into something, not even blue screen, but you could have just matted them over a black piece of cardboard with pinholes and it would have worked.
Right. There are other ways to have done it that would have been far more cost effective, but just as rich in experience for the audience.
Yeah, but as we said, they were really focused with Epcot of making things groundbreaking,
absolutely,
and innovative, and that was
and they succeeded because we're talking about it 40 years later.
That's and finding all these things. So
that and they set a standard now, because if it's not groundbreaking and super unique, everybody complains about it now. Like they've just got this expectations.
I read a thing the other day. We'll get into the present for a moment here, where someone's like, Disney hasn't opened a good attraction. I forgot the time frame, but they were excluding like Rise of the Resistance. Now, even if Star Wars is not your thing, it's very hard to make the case that it's like not a groundbreaking attraction.
Yeah, right. That's true.
I just, sometimes we got some tough critics out there.
Yeah. Things came together correctly, and on October 1st, 1982, Magic Journeys premiered as one of the opening day attractions at Walt Disney World. And according to the Orlando Sentinel, I read a couple articles here, Lerner actually was eavesdropping on people as they walked out of the theater during the first week. And it was as it was reported in the paper, a sold-out 591-seat theater, constantly sold out. So a little bit later, 2 years later, on June 16th, 1984, Magic Journeys began a 2-year run at Disneyland. Now, this is actually cool. It was done first on the outdoor space stage, which every night the film would be projected after nightfall, and you would don your glasses and watch it outside, which I thought was really cool. And then it moved to the Magic Eye Theater later on when that was built in Tomorrowland. It didn't stop there, though. It continued its westward journey and landed in Tokyo Disneyland on June 17th, 1985. The attraction replaced another film, ironically titled The Eternal Seas. So it's really interesting how all these sea films, one's replacing the other by Magic Journeys. Apparently that movie only lasted about a year in Tokyo Disneyland, The Eternal Seas. It didn't fare very well at the other parks. In Captain Neo came out in 1987. So when you think about it, Magic Journeys in its original location only lasted 5 years. So in 1986, the film was officially removed from Disneyland and Epcot. And that's when Captain Neo came out in 87. Because remember, guys, that theater had to be basically ripped apart. They did a lot of work
for the
on
effects
and
Captain Neo.
Yeah. So it was a lot.
It didn't die there in Florida, right, Todd?
It did not. In December of 1987, they returned it to Walt Disney World at the Fantasyland Theater, which is where the Mickey Mouse Revue originally was. Now, Hal, I had a question for you. Was anything in the theater between the Mickey Mouse Revue and Magic Journeys, or was it just empty that whole time?
Well, let's see. So Mickey Mouse Revue went out in 81 or 82, so it could end up in Tokyo for 82. Yeah. I think it sat empty. My understanding is I think they would do some cast member type events in there sometimes if they needed a meeting place. Yeah. But yeah, there wasn't anything that ran in there that was for the public during that time period.
That's interesting because it's a pretty decent sized theater and it's decent. So that's interesting.
It is. Well, I mean, Mickey's PhilharMagic is there.
Right, exactly. So this is the first time I saw Magic Journeys, was actually at Magic Kingdom. I remember being down there in the late 80s, and I said, oh my gosh, this is a film I never got to see at EPCOT. And it was also paired with a great 3D short featuring Donald Duck and Chip and Dale called Working for Peanuts, which I have to admit, I'd go in and just watch that because it was one of the best 3D films, or I think the only Donald Duck 3D film ever made. And it's fantastic. If you haven't seen Working for Peanuts, it's a great one. It's typical Chip and Dale and Donald Duck having a fit.
Can you see it if you have a nut allergy?
I believe it is safe. Yes. So the film played there for 6 years until it closed in December 1993 to make room for Legend of the Lion King. And as Hal mentioned, that's where Mickey's PhilharMagic is today. So gentlemen, the story ends there for Magic Journeys. Hal's smarts to bring a tripod in will allow us to share you what we can, or the entire clip of it. It's not super high resolution, but Hal was nice enough to record it so many years ago. We've cleaned it up as best we can, and you'll certainly be able to watch that and kind of get the gist of the film. Remember what Murray said. You have to watch a film like this with the audience to experience it. So I think that's a really important. So you're going to watch it. You're going to be a little tainted and say, I don't understand this. It's spooky, which I agree on the clowns. But I think, how you said it best, right? People reached out. That first scene, they were, wow, they gasped. If you don't have that effect with everybody next to you, the film isn't the same.
Well, and even if you don't have this film in 3D, it's
exactly.
Pointless. I mean, I think it's interesting. When we had Jeff Blythe on, we talked about how Disney had kind of made this transition with their Circle Vision movies from, we're doing travelogues, and then slowly they start to add elements of story onto it when they do, Wonders of China. And then by time he gets to, Timekeeper, it's like it's a full narrative that happens to be shot super well in 3D rather than a 3D movie that happens to have some narrative. And we see that same thing happen with 3D movies as they're really just kind of doing gags. Really, it's sort of a collection of gags and tricks and like just things that look cool in 3D, just kind of threaded together with a little bit of narrative. And then Captain EO comes out, and it's like it's a music video with story, and that gets upped again, when Honey, I Shrunk the Audience comes out, done as a fake continual cut stage show, which is phenomenal. And then, as Brian said, you have the pinnacle of the 3D Disney movies, which is Muppet Vision 3D.
Right.
They learned the lessons every time they did one of these and figured out how to like parlay it into the real entertainment versus just like a really neat spectacle. And unfortunately, if you watch Magic Journeys now, as we saw when they showed this at the D23 Attraction Rewind, if it ain't 3D, it's not engaging.
That's right.
At all in the least bit.
Yeah. And it definitely, you start to focus on elements that I don't think Marty Lerner wanted you to focus on, right? It takes away that ability to fall into the film, if you will, and be part of it. So
yeah. If it was ever released in 3D, I think it would be great. I think people would get into it and enjoy it again. Yeah. There's a certain timelessness to it, I think, where it could work, but we'll see.
There's a theater in EPCOT that they're just playing rerun Pixar shorts they could put it in. I've heard that would be interesting.
What's interesting? It could be played there because there's nothing special about the theater to play it in. Right, it doesn't need lasers. It doesn't need smoke.
It's even easier now because you have digital projectors, and
it could run every 3 shows if they wanted to.
Go start up your moveon.org. Is that the one where like everybody gets up?
Change.org.
Change.org.
Yeah, there we go.
Do your change.org thing.
Move on would be the opposite.
Move on. Move on is like, we're never going to play it again. Yeah. We're done. We're moving on. JT, you have been computing here in the past half hour. You were trying to compute the weight of the film that possibly Mark was carrying around. You're shaking. It looks like you got the old adding machine going. What do you got here?
Got the notes from my computer printout. It ran out on the ribbon tape. The whole deal.
Oh, you were rendering it?
I was rendering for. Yes. Okay. So there's going to be some film experts out here that may have an issue with this.
Yeah.
I based this on the Quentin Tarantino 70 millimeter print of The Hateful Eight. That made the news of the film world. I don't know when that movie came out, but they did 70 millimeter on it, and it was like in the suitcase it shipped in, it was like 350 pounds, this one film, and it was one reel, including a 13-minute intermission. So I did some math on things, did some multiplication. Now, what's interesting is that film was shot at 24 frames per second, so I had to multiply, blah, 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 blah. Didn't our interview, our guy here, he told us that it was, Mark, one can or two? Why did he have two cans?
Because he had the left and the right eye.
So
it's two
each
prints.
can, in my estimation, at 75 frames per second, was 3.66 pounds per minute, and that equals about 58 pounds minus the metal can. So go about 60 pounds each can he had to carry there. So 120 pounds he was lugging through the airport.
Oh, man. All right, well, any film buffs out there want to...
Yeah, the Hateful Eight, it being a 3-hour film, was only 220 pounds, but it was only 24 frames per second. So this was 3 times the weight, 3 times the weight.
That's crazy. Wow. Well, if we have any film buffs out there that want to rebuke our estimates and numbers here, that's a heavy piece of film. That's heavy duty.
Now you know why it got its own first class seat. It weighed more than a passenger for the most part.
Exactly. All right, gentlemen. Well, that wraps up the books on Magic Journeys. I appreciate you joining me for this 3-dimensional journey. How I wish we could have recorded this in binaural sound. That would have, added a little bit to it. But how do you have any T-shirt ideas coming out at all with Magic Journeys in mind?
Well, 2 things. One, thank you to all the people that on the last episode, I said, if anybody remembers some of the things that we talked about that you thought would make great shirts, let me know. And more than a few of you actually wrote in saying, like, you said you were going to do this. You said you were going to do this. So thank you, because now I have a base to work off of. We did release a Disney MGM shirt earlier this week, based on if you think of the back lot when it was New York Street. Well, I guess it was still there after it turned into the streets of America. There was a fake subway station with stairs that you could kind of walk down a little bit to look like you were walking down a subway. And there was a subway sign there, and I have reproduced that subway sign exactly as it was at Disney MGM. With our logo on it, of course, a little promo, but it makes not only a great t-shirt, but the art prints are perfect for it. It's the perfect rectangle. It will look fantastic on your wall if you're a fan of Streets of America or New York Street. So
what's cool about those, How, is if you go to Manhattan, they've got all the various subway signs, shirts, and magnets. It looks just like that. They all look like the subway sign, but still, it's cool to see a Disney version.
Yeah, and I did actually some research into the station that it was supposed. I don't believe that the station actually existed as they put it up in there. There was an 18th. I think it was 18th Street. There was an old station like back in the 1920s that was kind of in the location that they say it was supposed to be. I pulled out a map of New York City, and it was looking at the actual subway, say like, oh, did they just copy a real one? It's like, no, they kind of like faked it together. Kind of based on, now that's a guess, kind of based on where it looks like you might be standing, because they didn't do an authentic, like one spot in New York City where they made that backdrop. Like the backdrop has the Flatiron building on it and a bunch of other stuff that isn't exactly right there, but actually we should do some research. We should do a backlot episode, because I was trying to figure out, is there a spot where you get that view of the Flatiron building and the Chrysler building and the Empire State Building, and I think the answer is no. But yeah, so it's a neat little souvenir of something that's gone.
Excellent, and I'm sure you'll have some other ideas pumped out pretty soon too. So
yes.
Brian, I want to send over to you. We have kind of a big announcement to make too about something coming up in the next couple. Well, I should say next year, but it's
Less than a year.
Less than a year, yeah. So why don't we let them know about the big news?
Well, by the time this episode gets released, you will have those of you who follow us on social media will have seen our save the date announcement for Retro Magic 50. Now that is not the 50th Retro Magic event, but it is Retro Magic, our event celebrating Walt Disney World's 50th anniversary. It will be the weekend of April 23rd and 24th of 2022. So there's no excuse not to be there because we've given you more notice than anybody except maybe someone planning a wedding that weekend. So you've got plenty of notice. Tell your mother-in-law now you're not available for whatever's that weekend. Tell the kids their sports events are canceled because you're going to be in Orlando, Florida, Lake Buena Vista, with 300 or 400 of your closest, nerdiest friends, learning about obscure things and not so obscure things, with celebrity guests and lots of goodies.
We want to know whether you got to get your RSVP cards, chicken or fish, right? We got to get the head count.
Chicken or fish?
Yeah.
Every time I think about this announcement, I always think of the posters for Wayne's World when it came out. It said, "You'll laugh, you'll hurl, you'll cry," and that's what we promise at Retro Magic.
That's right. And I think we should say too, Brian, we learned a lot over the years with our different events. We're going to certainly make some changes to it to make it more comfortable for people. A little more food, a little more drink, a little more breaking it up a little bit more. And I think we joked last time too. We shot for the moon and everybody decided to come. So we need to pull it back.
Each event we make better.
There we go.
So this one will be our best event yet.
There we go. Climbing the ladder up, right? So we're looking forward to it. We can't wait to put it together, and looking for another 48 hours of complete exhaustion. Right, Brian?
For us, yes. But for you, the fans, it is nothing but fun. We'll make the sausage. You just enjoy the dinner.
There we go.
Do you still need us to run down and get a pontoon boat quickly?
I do not. There will be no marine element to this event that I know of. However, if we locate one of the swan boats in the Bahamas,
we might have to tow that up. Yeah, we'll be changing. We'll be sneaking that into the rivers of America. That's the best we can do for that right now. All right, gentlemen. Well, that wraps it up. Next month, we should probably announce where we're going. How you are going to take us back to part 3, the final Pleasure Island. We're gonna do a little Kungaloosh, I understand, right?
Yeah. We will talk specifically about the Adventurers Club and the Comedy Warehouse. Awesome. And we'll see if we can close out Pleasure Island. Maybe will or won't be the final countdown.
Well, these 3 only amount to the pleasure. You need a full 3 more episodes to talk about the island.
Just the island itself.
Yeah. We're going to talk about where it faces and the rocky shores and things like that. So
there were a bunch of big rocks, on the inside. That's true.
Yeah, that's true. There is. I remember it. I remember it well. So, well, as always, we thank all of our listeners for tuning in and listening to us over the years. Again, if you can, give us a shout out or review on iTunes or wherever your favorite podcasting app is. We appreciate everything you do for us, and we love bringing this show to you every month. If you can and you'd like to send us a donation, you can support us via our t-shirts at retrowww.com/support us. Or if you would like to send a donation, you can send it to lbvhistory.org/donate. Once again, we really appreciate your listening, and we will be back next month with Pleasure Island Part 3. And until then, Brian, take us out.
Follow the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society on Twitter and Instagram at LBVHistory and on the web at lbvhistory.org. For all things Retro Disney World, including exclusive merchandise, visit us on the web at retrowdw.com and on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at RetroWDW. And follow our hosts, Todd McCartney, on Twitter at WDWMS, Hal Bowers on Twitter and Instagram at GoAwayGreen, JT Cougar on Twitter at LS1JT and on YouTube at Rubber City Motoring and on the web at rubbercitymotoring.com. And you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Brian P. Miles. Retro Disney World is the monthly podcast of the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society, a nonpartisan, nonprofit, tax-exempt 501c3 organization, and is not affiliated in any way with the Walt Disney Corporation or any of its subsidiary or affiliated entities.
We love to hold dear and dear.